coming up.
And our voice was heard, and the democratic process worked.
The air traffic control monopoly is not to be, at least not yet.
The future of urban air taxis and a new airplane that could be a real game changer.
And even without snow, there's community. AOPA Live this week begins in just a moment.
Build and fly with the Sonex Aircraft B models. The B models offer more room and comfort, more fuel, more panel space, more engine choices, and the same great Sonex Aircraft flight characteristics. Learn more at sonexaircraft.com.
This is AOPA Live This Week with Tom Haines and Melissa Rudinger.
The little guys won. The push to give away air traffic control has ended.
Tuesday, the chief proponent of the idea threw in the towel. House Transportation Committee Chairman Bill Schuster put out this press release saying that the air traffic control reform provisions in H.R. 2997 did not, quote, reach the obvious level of support needed to pass Congress. AOPA President Mark Baker was ecstatic.
Really tribute to a couple 100,000 calls, letters, emails to Congress. And by the way, it shows our system works because GA's voice was heard, led by AOPA and others and NBA and all of our alphabets. But to really get people that excited and to make the difference to call and be heard and ultimately prevail on something that was, let's call it last June, an assumed law. And to make sure that we went on defense, and it didn't happen.
And it was a tough fight against much more powerful opponents, including the major airlines and their powerful lobby.
It certainly is a lesson learned for them. I mean, they spent tens and tens of millions of dollars on this effort. And, we were just a grassroots group that fought it with people in the street and all across these great 50 states to be heard. And even when they outspent us, 200 to 1 or 2,000 to 1, they weren't able to get the votes of support to prevail on privatizing ATC. So I don't think they'll be back anytime soon, but they will be back.
So bottom line, after more than 2 years of trying to push air traffic control out of the FAA, why did the effort collapse now?
They just didn't have the votes. And, that really goes out to our members and really the entire general aviation community. Over 250 general aviation organizations alone teamed up with a growing chorus of other industries, labor unions, state aviation officials, airports, very active in opposing this proposals.
Jim says the most likely scenario now is that Congress will pass a short-term extension for the FAA and then work on a multi-year FAA reauthorization that could be passed before lawmakers go home in August.
The thing that we really all want to work on in aviation is let's move forward. There are things like long-term funding that we all agree on. There's things about how do we expedite Datacom? How do we move to having a more efficient FAA in decision-making and support? That I want to work with everybody in aviation, including the airlines and everybody, to start to focus on the opportunities in the future by having a great system, making it better.
So a really big deal this week. Surprise, too, because I think we were still strategizing on where we were going to go next because we knew with that March deadline coming up for FAA, the extension running out, that we were going to see a big press by the airlines and by the administration in the next few weeks.
It was a surprise. We were literally gearing up, in the war room,
right.
And a pleasant surprise. But as Mark said, it's probably going to be back at some point, so we'll be ever vigilant. But our members and pilots really did make a difference. I've been out at events where pilots say, do I really need to call or write?
Right.
Does it really make a difference? And I think this proves it does. I think they said over 200,000 pilots contacted their members of Congress.
Was a very big deal. In fact, in my almost 33 years of covering general aviation, I can only think of kind of one other sort of legislative effort, which was the General Aviation Revitalization Act back in the mid-'90s,
Yes.
Early 90s, that sort of was at this same level where we got major parts of the general aviation and even non-aviation communities involved in trying to get something done in Washington. In that case, it was to get a bill passed. This case, it was to keep a bill from getting passed, but it worked, and it worked well.
We were both there for that effort as well, I hate to say.
Well, changing altitudes now, Bell Helicopter is no more. That's some of the surprising news coming out of the Helicopter Association International Convention this week in Las Vegas. Thousands of attendees take a gander at the latest and greatest in the rotorcraft world, and we learned that Bell Helicopter is now just called Bell. The new logo was plopped prominently on the nose of the equally new 407 GXI, engine and avionics upgrades to the venerable 407. Bell changed its name because it's a technology company now, it says, not just a helicopter company.
And survey says there's a demand for new helicopters, particularly light single-engine turbine choppers. Honeywell's annual forecast shows that civil helicopter customers have a better long-term economic outlook this year, and that means they intend to buy new helicopters over the next 5 years. The survey found that over the next 12 months, the helicopter fleet utilization is expected to increase significantly in North America and modestly in Europe and Latin America.
And one venerable helicopter model has a new home. It started life as the Hughes 300, then Schweitzer, and lately Sikorsky. And now the type certificate has been picked up by Schweitzer RSG, a new company affiliated with Rotorcraft Services Group in Texas. They're going to build the 300 in Fort Worth. And Airbus showed off the second H-160 prototype, a twin-engine medium-sized helicopter. It's reportedly the first helicopter to feature a full composite fuselage. Airbus also touts easy access, making maintenance easier. The rotorcraft is scheduled to hit the market in 2019.
Airbus has something else in the pipeline, an all-electric, self-piloted vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. You might call it a passenger drone. The Vahana completed its first full-scale test flight late last month, flying itself for 53 seconds. It's being developed by Airbus's Silicon Valley Skunk Works. Airbus envisions a future where you'll call up the drone via an app and it will fly you to your destination by itself. They have a 4-passenger version in the works too.
But Bell isn't going to get caught napping in this brave new urban air taxi world. Back at Heli Expo, Bell displayed a cabin mock-up for its air taxi. It too would be an autonomous 4-passenger flying machine. Bell says it's designing it from the cabin out, so nothing yet released publicly about what the so-called Bell air taxi would look like on the outside.
But let's go from pie in the sky to something that's flying right now. This week, a new aviation company surprised the industry.
Vashon Aircraft brought a new airplane design to the market that could fill a critical gap in the GA fleet. AOPA editor-at-large Dave Hirschman has the story.
If you haven't heard of Vashon Aircraft or its new Ranger, you're not alone. I didn't know anything about the company based near Seattle either, even though its first airplane has been flying at Payne Field in Everett, Washington for 2 years. But we're all going to hear a great deal about the Ranger because at $99,500, it's a great deal for a new factory-built airplane. And it's exactly what General Aviation has been clamoring for. A modern trainer that's sturdy, reliable, cheap to operate, and fun to fly. The Ranger is a special light sport aircraft designed by Ken Kruger, who played a central role in the RV-12 when he was at Vans Aircraft. The Ranger has lots in common with the RV-12, metal construction, pushrod controls, and a similar airfoil, but there are big differences too. The Ranger is powered by a 100-horsepower Continental engine, not a Rotax. It's got a high wing and big tires and beefy landing gear made for the backcountry. And the Ranger isn't a kit, it's a factory-built S-LSA. Kruger set out to create a utilitarian flying Jeep that can be a primary trainer and an adventure machine, with fold-down seats and a cargo area big enough to sleep in. That's a tall order, but Kruger and his team have delivered. Dave Hirschman, AOPA Live.
So now, back from the Seattle area, having flown the airplane, is Dave Hirschman to talk to us more in person. So Dave, where'd this thing come from? It seems to have just appeared out of nowhere.
It was on nobody's radar. It was a really well-kept secret. This company has been in existence for, I think, almost 5 years. Wow. And they've been sort of secretly working on this project. They've been flying it in plain sight at Payne Field, Boeing's epicenter, for 2 years. It's got hundreds of hours. They've got multiple airplanes flying, and yet the existence of the Ranger is a total surprise.
So who's behind the airplane? Vashon Aircraft. Who started?
It's John Terode, the founder of Dynan Avionics. He identified something that AOPA has long addressed, and that's the lack of a modern trainer that's robust and economical to fly, and this is that and more.
One of the challenges they face, that all LSA manufacturers face, is that artificial maximum gross takeoff weight of 1,320 pounds. How'd they deal with that?
The Ranger is hamstrung a bit by that too. It's got a 440-pound useful load. You know, they've got this huge amount of space. They can only carry a pretty limited weight.
Yeah, so I saw the specs on it. It's 46 inches wide, I think it's something like that, which is wider than my Bonanza.
Right. It feels like when you're in it, it feels like a Cessna 206, surprisingly roomy, and it flies like a big airplane. It's got this nice tight handling quality that it doesn't feel like a cork on the ocean. I mean, it feels like a substantial airplane. And I loved it. I've got nothing but good things to say and a very positive first impression.
Well, we'll look forward to learning more about it later this summer, and they're going to be at Oshkosh, right?
Right. They're going to have a handful of them there. Right. I think they're planning to have 4 or 5 airplanes. And my only question about them is whether they can build them fast enough to meet the demand that I'm highly confident will be there.
All right. Such a problem they'll have.
The best kept secret in aviation, I think, and now the secret's out.
It is out, and looks like a really nice airplane. I'm anxious to get a chance to fly it. I like the whole backcountry kind of thing, because really, if you're a student pilot and you're into kind of adventure and backcountry and hiking and all that sort of thing, you don't have a lot of options to be able to use an airplane for that kind of environment, particularly when you're a fairly new pilot. So this is one that probably you can learn to fly in and then maybe take it back into some of those kind of situations in backcountry and have some fun with it.
Sounds perfect. Very versatile.
Coming up after the break, who's on first to head the FAA?
And what do you do if there's no snow for your ski plane fly-in?
Hi, I'm Sully Sullenberger here tonight to support Angel Flight West. Pilot volunteers making sure that people, children and adults who need life-saving treatment can get to the treatment they need. As pilots, we're always looking for an excuse to go flying. So the next time you want to get a $100 hamburger, perhaps you should fly a volunteer flight for Angel Flight West. You'll be deriving satisfaction, purpose, and meaning from serving a cause greater than yourselves and flying.
A trial balloon floated over Washington earlier this week. It trailed a banner with some names to head up the FAA. News website Axios first reported that President Trump's personal pilot was on the short list to be nominated as the next FAA administrator. The president thinks his 757 driver knows what's wrong with the FAA.
Mike Pilot, who's a smart guy and knows what's going on, said the government is using the wrong equipment and instituting a massive multi-billion-dollar project, but they're using the wrong type of equipment.
The White House was quick to say that John Duncan has management experience, having run the Trump corporate flight department of 5 aircraft and helping to get an airline certified. Also on the list, the current acting administrator, Dan Elwell, a former airline pilot and executive for the Airlines Lobbying Association. So, been interesting choices, a couple of interesting choices there. We'll see where that goes. We've had some really good FAA administrators. Michael Huerta was not a pilot, but he served us pretty well.
Yeah, the debate always is, do they need to be a pilot? I
Right.
take the unpopular view. I think that it's nice that if they are, but I don't think they have to be a good administrator.
Right.
Huerta proved that with some of the reforms we got through with third-class medical reform, Part 23 reform. That was all because of his leadership.
Right.
On the other hand, having a pilot's license definitely helps. We've had some administrators that had that perspective, and it was a little bit easier to get them to understand our issues.
Yeah, when I think back of people like Don Engen, who was a good friend and a really wonderful person, and he was a good administrator. David Hinson, pilot, I flew with him, and we did some work on GPS approaches when they were brand new. So some good folks out there. Randy Babbitt was another one that was an airline pilot, and he didn't unfortunately get to serve very long, but I think he would have served
He
as
was,
well.
yes. And speaking of Admiral Engen, I did a biannual flight review with him one time. That was pretty intimidating.
Yes, sir, Admiral.
Well, with or without a permanent administrator, the FAA is again looking for your help, and it's for a good purpose. The 40th Annual General Aviation Survey is about to go out. The data is used to determine aviation activity, aircraft equipage, and safety information. The resulting aggregate data helps determine funding, service needs, and possible regulatory changes. Responses are confidential, so if you receive a request to participate in the survey, we encourage you to do so. It helps general aviation.
A message of note for pilots flying in the Washington, D.C. area. Starting March 29th, you'll need to call the Washington Air Route Traffic Control Center to file your flight plan through the flight restricted zone. At the moment, Flight Service is handling those calls. FAA says the change is to improve security. You can find all the information and details on our website and in the FAA NOTAM. Did we have said this before? You need to check the NOTAMs before you fly.
And finally, so often, the best thing about general aviation is community. AOPA Director of eMedia, Alyssa Cobb, saw this community in action at a ski plane flying weekend in Michigan, where the conditions were less than ideal.
Ski plane flying is the perfect way to experience some aviation fun in the cold winter months. Every year, a group of pilots gets together at Northwoods Aviation in Cadillac, Michigan. I joined them this year to get a taste for what it's like to fly in the powder.
Everyone has shown up. Former astronaut, rocket scientists, ski plane flying experts, all here to fly a Super Cub and a J3 Cub on skis. The only problem is there's no snow.
This has been the worst conditions we've had in terms of snow.
But for these group of friends who've been getting together for about 20 years, it's not such a big deal that there's no snow.
Getting together with people that I only see once or twice a year because they're so far away is just delightful.
This group of friends also gathers in the summer for some seaplane flying.
We fly the same airplanes
off the same
floats on the same lakes, but now they're liquid.
Right. Yeah, so we fly
off sort of symmetry.
And there's always water in July,
yes,
which is nice.
There may be a hunting expedition going on later this weekend, and the hunt will be for snow. We'll see if we find any.
Today the lakes are frozen solid, so the Super Cub is on tundra tires, and we're landing on the frozen lake. I love giving the instruction. I like flying with these folks. They're all very good pilots, all thoughtful, good judgment, but also the socializing. Some of my best friends in the world are here, and getting together with them through this is great. I just love it.
Alyssa Cobb, AOPA Live.
Wow, what a great tradition.
Yeah, it is. That's a really great event that Rick Durden organizes. I've been to it, and when I was there, I got to fly. We actually had snow that year, and I actually got to fly a Cub on skis. And it's really fun on the snow. When you land on a frozen lake, however, without a suspension system, it translates every bit of that load right to the airframe, and so it's pretty jarring, but the snow is way fun.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, great use of an airplane. And that does it for this week. Thanks so much for giving us some of your time.
We hope to see you back here next Thursday for another edition of AOPA Live This Week.
Purchasing your own aircraft is an exciting experience. AOPA Finance simplifies the process, saving you money with lower interest rates and hassle-free loans, so you get into your new aircraft sooner. AOPA Finance, the right approach to buying an aircraft.